I want to take just a moment to talk to all my safety professional friends, colleagues out there. And I want to ask you a question. What if the most dangerous words that you heard in your workplace aren't, hey, I don't care about safety, but something real simple like, it will only take a second? Now, how many of you have heard that before? I've heard those words more times than I actually care to count. And I want to tell you about one particular morning when those words shook me to the bone, and it made me actually take on a whole different meaning when it comes to safety. Because in a matter of seconds, I watched a safety program I was proud of come dangerously close to failing an employee. Nobody got hurt that morning, but it could have been a very, very different story. For years, we actually had trained all of our employees to do something very simple before jumping into a particular situation that could potentially hurt them. And that was to look, listen, then make a safe decision. We talked about identifying hazards. We've gone through the job hazardous analysis, or the JHAs. We've walked through work with the employees, and we've identified countless hazards and how we could abate those hazards throughout the workplace. We've worked hard to make sure the employees had all the training that they need, the equipment, and a safe place to do their jobs. And honestly, I thought we had a pretty stout and solid safety program. I really did. Then one morning, after a shift change, I was actually standing on the production floor, and I was watching employees come in and make their way, to their shifts and to their assigned work areas. Everything looked normal. The employees were arriving, the equipment was moving around, forklifts, electronic pallet jacks. People were getting ready actually to start their day. And then without warning, I watched an employee jump onto a forklift and started driving away. Now, let me stop right there. This employee wasn't a forklift operator. And what happened really next really got my attention. He drove away. He came dangerously close to another employee who was walking past a blind spot. Thankfully, nobody got hurt during that time. But it could, like I said, it really could have been a different story. I stopped the employee and I asked him a very simple question. Why are you on a forklift? And he said, the supervisor had me moving pallets yesterday, and he said, it will only take a second. Then he explained to me that they were actually in a hurry and needed to get the work done. And I'll be honest with you, at that moment, this old boy was mad. I was upset. I was disappointed because of it, because the employee knew better. The supervisor himself knew better. We had trained people to recognize hazards. We had written the JHAs. We had talked about the equipment. We had walked our employees through those blind spots. And we had talked about making those safe decisions. And yet there it was, right in front of me, a decision that could have ended very, very differently. Not for just that employee, but potentially another employee as well. But that incident taught me one thing, or something that I'll actually never forget. A safety program can be perfect. You can have a robust and stout safety program on paper and still fail actually on the production floor. Like I said, we had the policies, the procedures, the JHAs, we had the safety meetings. We had involved so many different people throughout the organization in our safety meetings. We provided them what we considered to be very robust training, asking all the questions, doing the practicals. We've had the posters hanging on the walls. But none of these things can make the decision for an employee when actual pressure is on. That's where actual culture comes into play. Because in that moment, the message wasn't necessarily forget safety. We're in a hurry, get it done. And sometimes that's all it takes. That's when those 5 words start creeping actually into the workplace. It will only take a second. And here's the problem. Sometimes it really does only take a second. But a second is really, enough time for that forklift to move. A second is enough time for someone to step out into that blind spot. A second is enough time for a hand to get caught in a piece of equipment that's missing a guard. A second is enough time for a decision to change someone's life forever. And that's why I don't want you to hear this story as another safety lecture. I want you to think about your own workplace. I want you as employees to understand and hear this message. Because when production gets behind, a lot of times that meaning can be thrown out the window. What happens when a shipment is late? What happens when the supervisor is under pressure? What happens when someone says, just get it done? It will only take a second. Because that's when your safety culture is really being tested. Not during the safety meetings, not when everyone is sitting in a training room, and not when you're reviewing JHAs or you're writing JHAs. It's tested when nobody thinks the safety coordinator is watching. That's the real test. When you're not watching, when they think you're not watching, a lot of times that's when it's tested. And that's what this story actually taught me. Safety isn't about teaching people what to do. It's about creating a workplace where doing the safe thing is still the expected thing, even when you're in a hurry. Because the next time someone says, hey, it'll only take a second, I want you to stop. I want you to look. I want you to listen. And then make that safe decision. Because sometimes all it takes is just a second. Thank you for joining me on this. Again, this is Tim with JHAs Safety Solutions. And I hope you will just stop, look, and listen before you make that decision. Take care. Have a safe day.